We just got back from our very first D23, the ultimate fan event. We're here to talk about it, our overall thoughts, take you through our day by day. I guess overall, Mike, what are your thoughts?
It was a lot to take in, so I thought Destination D23 was going to prepare me a little bit. I still was not ready. For the, I guess for record, I've never been to a convention. I've never been to anything like that. And I guess it was kind of everything I would expect from a big convention. You know, just lots of people, lots of people passionate about Disney, lots of people dressed up in Disney
gear.
It was a great time.
Similar thoughts as Mike. I think we can just kind of go through our day-to-day, sort of like take you through our journey a little bit. So day one actually started at 3:50 in the morning. With these conventions and events, they have multiple panels, exhibits on the show floor, and of course there's merchandise opportunities where you can get exclusive merch, which we've gotten. And somehow Disney decided that they were going to open up their virtual queue spot at 4 in the morning for the first pull. If you've been to the parks and whatnot, 7 a.m. generally is the first pull.
So what we think is going on is they're having the East Coast IT support this virtual queue because 4 a.m. Pacific is 7 a.m. Eastern. We
didn't really get to experience sort of the queuing, the chaos of queuing until the second or the third day because we pulled a virtual queue so early, so our boarding group actually got called. Even though there was a little bit of confusion, we actually got to queue up with lesser people in front of the holding area and right in front of the showroom. The way it works is that when you go into the convention center, you get through security, they give you a lanyard and a bag, and you go in, but you actually don't get to go into the convention show floor right away. There's a whole room that is full of just lines and markings on the floor where you are essentially holding there.
Till 9:15.
Yeah.
Technically the convention starts at 9, but there were some days where they went less into 9:15. We got there at 7:30, no problem. They are sticklers for, water's okay, reusable water bottles are okay, but bringing in anything else that's open, Starbucks
food,
coffee,
snacks.
Foods, they were pretty strict about it. We got through, no problem. Bags, they're going to check. We chose to go bagless the whole time, and that was a great decision. I have no complaints over it. When we talk about the convention center later, they are strict about their bag policy there, and it's different than the normal one.
Once the showroom floor opened, we were able to get into the room right away, actually way before everybody else did, which is really nice. So we actually got to see a pretty empty showroom.
But it was funny. They warned us because they were letting all the virtual queues go to their spots first just to keep it organized.
Yep.
They warned us that if you tried to peel off and go to Lorcano, or that, they were going to kick you back out. So you did have to stick with your group.
The first thing that we did was, because I pulled a boarding group of 5, we were able to get into Mickey's of Glendale. Super cute store, love it. Lots of Imagineering merch, and they actually had, I think, D23, Destination D23 merch from last year.
Yes.
Heavily discounted. So
70% off. So if you're willing to wait, next year there will be some of the merch left over, most likely, and it will be 70% off. People were loading up on the Destination D23 stuff, especially at this one, I think.
Backtrack a little bit with these panels. I personally did a little bit of research to figure out which panels that I really wanted to do, because you have to go into a mindset thinking that you cannot do it all. So the one panel on day one that I really wanted to get into that we didn't have the advanced reservation for is the music of Marvel. I think that was the second thing that we did after the shopping trip.
Yeah, so I think we did that, then we walked around. They had a bunch of movie cars and stuff there from various different shows and things like that. The stores were on one end, and we had to actually walk over to the other end where the premiere stage is. Premiere stage is pretty huge. I don't think I ever saw them really turning anybody away from that unless you showed up late for the standby queue, except for the Marvel animation one. Other than that, I think that was the one panel where they actually met capacity. Music of Marvel was fine. I honestly didn't get that much out of it.
So the panelists were, I think, Michael Giacchino, who was the moderator for the panel. They had the Lopez's, Kristen, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, music creators behind Frozen, as well as Agatha All Along, and then the composer from Ms. Marvel as well.
Yeah, so that, it was nice to hear them talk a little bit. I didn't really get that much out of the panel. The big thing at the end was they gave you the score from the Fantastic Four opening. But I always like hearing creatives talk about their process a little bit, and that part was entertaining to me. but I felt like the panel was a half hour too long for me.
Did we do the company store right after the panel?
Yes, we did do that because I went to the company store. It was still within like an hour of my reservation, but they were calling later groups. And I just went to the front of the line and I showed the Disney employee there working there. I'm like, hey, this, I had this panel, and they let us basically skip the later groups and just jump right in.
Other than the panels, there are a couple of things that we really wanted to hit on the show floor. As we were walking around, the next thing we actually did was we went through this TVA, this Marvel experience, the Time Variant Authority. They created this walkthrough experience.
Well, the premise of the thing
it's a recruitment, right?
Yes, that you were coming to the TVA for a job interview, and that they were going to figure out what job at the TVA worked best for you, and that's what they were going to assign you to.
Yep.
So you kind of you got the front desk, you're going in, they have all the Time Variant Authority security guards and staff, and they're all in character. It was a lot of fun. And then you're going through the halls of the TVA, and they warn you not to go through any of the doors, but they have the doorways to see the other timelines.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see through and see what's going on. The big surprise at the end of this, and this was, I think, was super cool.
It was really cool.
Is through one of the doors, there's Rocket. I'm not sure if it's Rocket when he's a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy or when he's leading the Guardians of the Galaxy.
We don't know exactly what timeline it is.
I forgot to ask where he was. But Rocket was fantastic. Very much like the Crush experience, where you have the animated Avatar and then it's Rocket would talk to the crowd. He asked me if I was in charge. I said, I'm not sure. He goes, well, then you definitely aren't. It was a good couple minutes that you got to spend with him. And then, so that's kind of why that queue took a while.
Yeah.
Totally worth it. Glad we did it.
And then you got to hear the interactions. I didn't know who it was. We hear the voice.
Yeah, you could, because they queue you kind of like around the corner. You could hear it. I didn't know who. And we were fortunate. We happened to be like the first couple people in the next group to come around. And I was very excited. I'm like, hey, Rocket. And he's like, finally, somebody knows my name, right?
And then after that, I got to do something pretty cool. I don't know, Mike, if you did that. It was The Simpsons. You know how Homer has that, like, backing into the hedge meme.
Yes.
They had that, so you could actually recreate that meme. And of course, I promptly made my own GIF as I kind of started to like back into the hedge. So that was great. So after lunch, we actually did the Disney food panel.
That was one of the few panels. We left early because we all know Disney food kind of popular.
And it wasn't one of the smaller.
So it was in one of the smaller ones. Yeah. We thought that would be one of the more popular ones.
Yeah.
So we got up there and we went, and again, this one was really good. It got filled up. This was one of the few ones where we talked to some fellow Ultimate Fan Event guests later that they didn't get in. It was a little bit of
a letdown.
Little bit of please buy our book. Now there was a pastry chef. There was one that was in charge of the events. Mm-hmm. Then there was the head chef for the Disneyland resorts, and then the author of the book. This one, I think it was interesting to hear some more of their personal history,
the backgrounds,
and how they kind of got to where they're at, what they come up with. The festival chef was really good because he kind of talked about some of the creative process and some of the competitiveness. They'll compete with each other in a good way to come up with a dish, so that they always try and like whose dish did better at the festival.
Yeah, I think it was more of a personal journey, talking about their history, their career leading up to Disneyland, what they're doing right now. The individual that talked about the events gave a couple of sneak peek ideas into what we should expect in the next couple of years in terms of Disneyland, the different festivals. So that was interesting.
So one of the things that the festival guy talked about was all of the mac and cheese that they've done. Because they've been doing mac and cheese for so long, but it is so popular, they keep doing it. So one of the challenges is, how do we do mac and cheese differently?
So after that, it was kind of towards the afternoon timing, and then we'll talk about the Honda Center sort of transportation a little bit. The next thing that we did was the Avatar walkthrough experience.
Okay, all right, so that was after that.
Yeah, that was interesting. It felt like a Navi River journey, walking style, essentially.
I thought one of the things that was really neat in that queue was Neytiri.
Yeah.
They had a 2-scale. Neytiri, which kind of gives a really good impression of how
big they are.
The Na'vi are.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
And they had little models of their
they had a lot of the busts and things like that, and a lot of the costuming work and things in there. Just a really good walkthrough that kind of felt a little bit like a walkthrough.
It was like a Navi River journey, on foot. And then they had one cast member or Imagineer had one of those baby Navis, and they were kind of like, talking to you. It's just
they had a baby.
Yeah, baby Banshee, and then they were talking. It's kind of like the Universal Studios dinosaur experience.
It was the baby raptor experience in the Jurassic Park area, but I didn't want to say it while we were in there. But it was great. They did a great job.
The highlight of that day was the Goofy movie panel.
That was the one, like when the initial things came out, the initial schedule of like, these are all the panels on each day.
Yeah.
That was my number one. I'm like, out of all these panels, that's what I want to do. I really liked a Goofy movie, and it was fantastic. This was what I was hoping for in a panel.
Yeah.
They had...
I thought it was about the Goofy movie, but it ended up being about the documentary about
it was the making of the movie. Yeah, so they had the two documentary filmmakers. Then they had, I think, the producer and the director from the original
Goofy
movie. And then they had Bill Farmer. This was kind of like the first, like, yay, what are the voices?
Yeah.
Right? They had that, and they introduced the documentary. And what had happened was the one director had done, at the time of making of a Goofy movie, with his own, like, 8mm camera and a couple other cameras.
And cassette tapes
had just recorded the making of it.
Yeah.
And he literally had a box in his basement. So these, unbeknownst to these documentary filmmakers, they were like, hey, we want to do this.
Yep.
And so they reach out and they're going through the process, and the guy goes like, hold on. And he goes down to the basement. He comes up with this huge box full of tapes and goes, my wife's been wanting me to throw this away for years. So they have this. And then I think one of the things that got me really excited about eventually seeing this documentary is they're working with an animation studio in Colombia. I think it's in Colombia.
Yeah.
And they were kind of going through the process of doing this documentary.
Like, how do you frame it? Yeah.
And the animation studio in Colombia goes, hey, we think it would be a great idea to do the documentary when we're interviewing the people involved, to do caricatures of them in the style of a Goofy movie. Now you're watching a documentary about the Goofy movie done in the style of, and it's really neat. It's
like the animated sketch.
It's the animated sketch art style, where you can see all the line, the lines that they use to kind of line
the guidelines.
Guidelines, thank you.
Yeah.
So very cool style, very creative. I was like, that's perfect. Of course you should do it like that. And now I'm just waiting for this documentary to come out.
They're teasing it. It's supposed to come out on Disney Plus at some point.
Apparently we missed like a screening in our area months ago that obviously I didn't know about. So that's another kind of thing I learned. They do these little screenings and samples of their stuff all over. So, maybe do some digging during the year and see if there's some kind of cool documentary stuff going on.
And then unfortunately, this is the one that we had to cut short.
Well, we didn't. It turns out we probably didn't have to, but because this was the first year that the big event was at the Honda Center, they were kind of saying, hey, you need to leave 90 minutes before to make sure you get there in time. And to be fair, Friday, the traffic was the worst. That took us the longest. It took us like 40 plus minutes to get over there. But once we got over there, through in and quick. So we actually left 15 minutes early, and I'm very bummed out because apparently one of the things that I missed was Bill Farmer singing the song in a Goofy movie with his actual son that Goofy and Max sang. So I did not get to see that in person. Very bummed out to hear that. I'm sure if I hunt on the internet, I'll find it. We stayed probably till about 10 minutes left.
As long as we thought we
could, and it was great. That made my day. But
Honda Center. So the transportation was actually, getting there. We'll talk about the getting back aspect of it.
I was expecting art buses.
Yeah, but they had art buses.
They got us limo coaches, like the limo bus coaches, right? So that was really nice.
Yeah.
And there was no problem going from the convention center to there other than the fact that you got stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
But they had them queued up like crazy. They would pull you in, fill up a bus, go. Pull you in, fill up a bus, go. So that was the nice part about getting there. Now, security when you get there, read up. I'm assuming it'll be the same next year, but make sure you read up on their camera policy at the Honda Center. It's different than
the convention center.
And the bag policy, very different. They gave us like little wristbands that lit up together like you've seen at stadiums before.
And they also gave us a mystery packet. They specifically tell you, do not open that until you're told to do so. So we're kind of like, okay, we got this little like wristband, and then we got the little package.
I think I know the reason behind that, but well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So
first night, it was the entertainment panel.
Yes, which was good, but I think this was the panel out of the events where like a lot of the stuff was kind of known.
Yeah.
Right? It's either they had talked about it at Comic-Con or other stuff, or it just had been leaked or released. So there really wasn't anything too big there. And then a lot of the stuff would be like, oh, you're going to be the first to see this. And then it's immediately launched on
somewhere else,
X
on
or
social media.
YouTube or social media. Because there was definitely people like live streaming.
It was interesting because last year when we went to Destination D23, they had very specific camera policies where...
Because they would tell you, they're like, hey, at this
right now,
point, no
shut
camera.
It down.
And there'd be like 5 people in each area around you just camera hawking like crazy.
Yeah. And then I've heard from previous D23 expos is that they would actually put people's phones in bags and seal them. Like, you literally cannot use phones, camera, anything. This year, I was actually a little surprised that that didn't happen.
So they did do stuff like that in some of the other panels for the Honda Center.
I think it was just too big, right?
I think they just realized that there's no way that they're really going to be able to police that. So they went with, I think, whatever their approach was this time.
Yeah. So I think this time, like, the big announcements were lots of sequels. Lots of sequels. We got
there was
Toy
2,
Story
3,
5,
4, another
we got
4.
Frozen 3 and possibly 4. And then, Moana 2.
Yeah.
Zootopia 2.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of numbers.
I think Pixar had the 2 original.
They did, yes.
Original ones.
Yep.
There's they're doing a series that's the baseball series that looks cute.
Yeah, on Disney Plus.
Then there's the like Ori or what's the one that goes in space where the kid gets launched.
Elia, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one looks interesting. And then was there a third one?
There was the chipmunk or the beaver one.
The beaver one.
Man, that one looked good.
That is the one I'm kind of most excited for, is the beaver one.
What was the premise of that?
It's a person gets their consciousness put into a robotic beaver so they can live amongst the beavers and learn about beavers. Which sounds like, if you go back, there's a rat that wants to cook.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of that kind of goofy premise where there's no real... You're like, what am I getting into? Yeah, it's a movie about a rat cooking. Okay, all right. It's a movie about a person pretending to be a beaver living with beavers. I think this is
It's so ridiculous that it's actually like fascinating that I'm interested.
I think it could be really good.
And then I think they announced a new Avatar movie that is coming out. They released the name of it called Fire and Ash. James Cameron, I think, stopped by and talked about it.
So James Cameron came out for that. He made it sound initially like that first night that he came just for that, all the way from New Zealand. He was getting inducted 2 days later as a Disney legend, so I'm pretty sure that's why he came.
We saw some celebrities. We saw The Rock. Rock came out, talked about Moana 2.
And then his monster truck movie,
that
which
one
is
really
getting mixed.
confused me a lot. And then I think for me, Daredevil Born Again, which is the Disney Plus show. So they had a full trailer. And then I think they had the Agatha All Along, another TV Disney Plus show that's coming in sometime in September. So the song that they teased at during the Marvel Music panel, they had a full-blown performance with all of the cast, including Catherine Hahn. There's I think some of the Broadway legends. One I can't remember her name, but anyways, they did the whole song and dance, and then they showed the trailer.
Oh, yeah, okay, I remember that, yeah.
Patti LuPone, okay. That's her name. And then what I was really excited about, the new Tron movie, Tron Ares.
Oh, that was
really
the
cool.
one I had, so I haven't been paying too much attention on. And that, I think, was the one that I was really personally excited to see more in the Tron universe.
So instead of us going into Tron's universe, Tron is coming to us.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So that one looks really good. It kind of hits right now, obviously, with like a lot of AI in the zeitgeist and stuff like that. So it's, this was a franchise that was started long ago. Yeah. And it's now just as relevant as it ever was. As kind of
Magic Kingdom's Tron just opened, so I think they're kind of capitalizing on that a little bit. They also got, I think, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They teased a little bit about the new Mandalorian Grogu movie.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That had slipped my mind. There was so much to take in.
There was a lot. And Captain America at the Brave New World, that's coming up, I think, next year, sometime in February. I think they showed an extended trailer where they had the Red Hulk finally made an appearance.
Yes, you finally saw the Red Hulk. So
And then I think, and then Marvel did a couple things. Ironheart, another Disney Plus show. Marvel, I think Marvel is pretty much all Disney Plus at this point. And then I think, Snow White. So they finally showed us the song.
Whistle While You Work.
Yeah, they did the Whistle While You Work, and they had the two main cast members, the Evil Queen as well as Snow White. They come Gal Gadot is the Evil Queen. So they show that. The dwarves are looking really interesting. So hopefully this is still a rough stage.
The dwarfs, in my opinion, are just like, as somebody that appreciates animation as an art form, this is one of those ones where it's like, they kind of look straight out of Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
The dwarves just don't look great.
Yeah.
So,
it was a little
and I like my dwarves. So
then David Blaine came out.
Yes, and then so that was kind of now we get into the package from the beginning. So David Blaine comes out. And I think the reason why you weren't supposed to open that is because I think the way the trick kind of works is if everybody had taken the cards out and played with them, the trick wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So he comes out, and he's introducing
a new show on
Nat Geo show, which looks kind of intense.
It's like him trying all the random things that the rest of the world does, like sticking a sword in your nose, getting eaten by bees. I was flinching a little bit.
So the cards that he made were cards that he made just for D23. They had like D23 on them.
Yep.
And basically he had everybody in the audience walk through a card trick with him at once, where he would have you, break the deck, do whatever, take top, bottom. And then at some point he started asking people in the audience, like, I want you go through however many cards in your deck. The person would say, okay, take the top, and he'd do all this stuff. Well, finally he pulls up two people on stage, hands one person, part of the deck, and he goes, okay, go through this, take a card, don't tell anybody, don't show anybody, right? And then so he takes a card, and then he's like, okay, you got the card. Yeah, I know what I'm going to take. So then the next person, he goes, okay, I want you to pick a card out of here, right? That person picks a card, and it's, he asks the person, okay, what's your card? And the person goes, 3 hearts. Okay. Now, the woman that's holding the card that she picked, he goes, okay, show us your card. And it's like the queen of spades or clubs. And he goes, well, in her hand, he's holding the 3 of hearts. And sure enough, the queen in the card is holding the 3 of hearts. And throughout all this process, he had everybody in the audience take one card out of the deck, like, supposedly at random. You were supposed to pick a card and hold it. And then everybody in the audience was actually holding the 3 of hearts. So that was kind of the magic trick. It was really neat.
Yeah, 12,000 people. And then a couple other things that ended the panel were we saw a first look at Mufasa, which is the prequel.
And they went a very different way with it to where I'm actually kind of interested
really
seeing the movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, basically it's about the trailer yet. It's about the childhood of growing up of Scar and Mufasa. And the way that you see them in The Lion King is not how they start out. So it's very different. It looks like a good story, actually.
I think it's based on the photorealistic version of the movie instead of the actual original animation.
Yeah.
So that took us to the end of the panel. Now, getting back from the panel was a very different story from going there.
So Disney people are awesome at queuing up. If you give us a line, we'll go to it.
Right, and give us an end-of-line paddle.
So that was part of the problem was, for all of us who've been trained to find the person with the stick and the thing on the top of the stick that says, this is the end of the line for X.
Yep.
And we will go straight to that and get in line.
Yep.
The problem we had was there was a person standing with the stick that said, this is the line for the buses, and they were not at the end of the line. They were at the middle of the line. So
kind of defeats the purpose of end of line.
It created chaos.
Oh my goodness!
Down the thing, and you ended up having like 5 people, because people thought they were standing at the end of the line, but they were standing at one of end of 5 lines. So then, obviously, when that all came together, people were a little bit tense. But in all honesty, people were cracking jokes about it, laughing. It was a good time.
So day 2 started at 350 yet again. There's a bunch of different stores at D23, and we had gone to a couple more stores during day one, making it Glendale and the company store. And then D23, the Marketplace, is another place that we wanted to go to. Unfortunately, we didn't get as close of a virtual queue boarding group in the morning, so we got to stand in line on day 2.
Yeah. And, well, so this was kind of a reoccurring theme for me throughout the entire time that I was there.
Yep.
One of the things I really enjoyed was talking to the people in line.
Actually, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, we were in queue for an hour and a half with people in line, but we kept running into people we know. We talked about things that they were doing, things they were interested in, you know, kind of like what's their personal little brand of Disney fandom.
And what's their strategy in navigating the expo.
But when we came in this morning, they had a bunch of signs saying, like, hey, if you're a virtual queue, 1 through whatever, come to this spot, and then they would take you in groups over to, like, the other area.
D23 Marketplace was a hodgepodge of everything.
D23 Marketplace was the big thing there that I kept seeing people walking around with these bags with this huge thing in it. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Turns out it is the Star Tour shuttle.
Oh my gosh.
And it also plays, I think, the original Star Tour clip, like in the screen. So the top comes off, and there's a little screen, and it plays the original ride footage. And then it has Rex instead of C-3PO in it. The doors open up. It's really very, very cool.
It's a nice model. That was a hot item.
It's got seatbelts. Yeah, very hot item that a lot of people were getting. Was very cool. They had Mary Poppins 60th.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the rides this year or next year have their anniversary.
Yeah, so they had like the big one. There was Ichabod Crane, Mary Poppins. There was a cool little Maleficent like plushie that a lot of people had. What was they had? There
Disneyland is having their 70th anniversary.
So they had some
next year.
70th anniversary Spirit jerseys and things like that. I mean, obviously there was just a bunch of stuff, more pins.
I think it's for the D23 Marketplace, it looks like they're more like preview items where eventually I think you're going to be able to get them at the parks. Yeah. The D23 Marketplace surrounding area, so they have like a separate convention hall devoted to the D23 Marketplace as well as some like Pixar.
Which you can get to from the second floor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then they had the Disney Publishing, which I think they had a couple books.
They had the cookbooks. That's also where Joffrey's was. I was expecting to be able to get a whole Joffrey's coffee, but they just had little tiny sample cups.
After that, I think we kind of just walked around, looked around that part of the convention center. They had some like Pixar figurines. We got to take some pictures. They had like a whole playpen area as well.
They had a golf cart dressed up as the pizza delivery truck.
They had some artifacts.
There was a Star Wars arcade area where it was like Star Wars skee-ball.
Yeah.
They had some artifact things.
They had like a Marvel little like kiosk. They had some Marvel related, costuming. I don't think it was like a pseudo merchandise kiosk.
There wasn't anything there that really we felt we needed to have. So
after that, I think that led to a really cool highlight of that day. In the showcase area, there was a huge area where they put Disney Imagineering in.
I think this was not just a highlight of the day. This was a highlight of the
trip,
3 days.
Actually. Yeah. In the show booth, they had different areas where they had the Imagineer or Imagineers responsible for designing that technology, the costuming. So I'll let you get to that.
So we ended up going into the Imagineering booth. There's a floor that you can move on. So if you're wearing virtual reality goggles, you can kind of keep walking in one direction permanently or change directions.
Yeah.
And it's not just a simple treadmill. If I could kind of describe it, it's like a top on its side and you're walking on the edge of the top, and then there's a bunch of tops and they're in tiles and they can all move and go different ways, so you can kind of keep moving around. And the inventor of that is a gentleman named Lanny Smoot, who's in the National Inventor Hall of Fame. He's got over like 100 patents on all of these amazing inventions he's done. A lot of them, I think, while working at Disney. I'm sure he's got patents from before he was at Disney. He's just a brilliant guy. And he's kind of a personal hero of mine. I think he's awesome. He's one of my favorite inventors and Imagineers. And I got to meet him. He was spending, right before he was talking to me, he was giving career advice to a guy for like 5 minutes. He spent easily 5 minutes with me. I was asking him kind of like, hey, where did the idea, the impetus for this invention come from? He said, honestly, the Star Trek holodeck. He's like, I've always wanted to kind of recreate that ability to like in a very confined space be able to go anywhere.
While Mike was meeting Lanny Smoot, I actually got the opportunity to meet Daniel Joseph, one of my favorites. I don't know if you've seen on Disney Plus, there is a series called Behind the Attractions. So one of the episodes is on the Haunted Mansion. And of course, we know that there is the Hatbox Ghost in now Disneyland and in Magic Kingdom. And in fact, last year when we went to Disney Destination D23, they had a full model because Magic Kingdom version hadn't rolled out just yet. So we actually got to see how, like, the behind the scenes and you know, the creation of that technology. Regardless, Daniel was there by that booth, and I think he had some other technology that he was showcasing where it was a 3D projection onto a 2D surface where well, I guess it's 2D, right?
It looked like so it looked like two three-dimensional pizzas, like rotating in space. Yeah. But it was on a flat surface that is literally from me to Jin.
Yep.
And
you can see it from like different angles.
And you can see it, and all it had was like two lights. I'm just trying to figure out. Yeah, the light source.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to figure out how this is. Yeah, how the magic's working. And then next to him, there was a lot of demo models of concepts of stuff that you see in the park. One of which he had his original mock-up of the Beauty and Beast transformation in Tokyo Disneyland that he used to demonstrate the principle to basically the people who was trying to get to greenlight the project.
Yeah, so the cool thing is, obviously he is a brain trust behind all that technology, but he saw me wearing this necklace, and you've seen this necklace probably in most of my videos because
she never takes it off.
This is my most treasured thing from the Galactic Star Cruiser. Turned out, he's just like, hey, have you been on the Halcyon, the Star Cruiser? I said, yeah, multiple times. Absolutely love it. Absolutely miss it. And he said, actually, have you done this one particular thing on the cruiser? I said, yes, I have. What he was referring to was during one of the storylines, you actually got to see Yoda pop out of a box, you know, the holocron. It's a Yoda holocron. And he said he's actually the person that designed that. So that was awesome.
And then he said the specific challenge for that, a lot of the magic that they do with the 3D projections. Yeah. You have control over like where the person's viewing it from.
Yeah.
This one is in the middle of a room, and it's basically viewed from 360 degrees. So that was particularly challenging. And then they also had to make it portable, right? So it was in a room where you did your lightsaber training. Yep. And so you can't have this big thing in the middle of the room for lightsaber training. So they had to make it portable. They had to make it viewable from all angles.
Tiana's Bayou Adventure hasn't opened in Disneyland yet. It's recently opened in Magic Kingdom, but they had a whole exhibit for how they designed the costume, how they designed the backdrop. And then some of the other exhibits I saw that were really neat was the Fantasy Spring that just opened in Tokyo. How they picked the plants, how they picked the colors, and then they had a couple of artists working on the relief, sculpting this huge panel. I'm assuming it's clay, right? So they were sculpting and putting some characters in. It's just fascinating.
The other thing that was going on in the Imagineering booth that we didn't really do too much of was in the middle there was a little stage, and on that stage they would have throughout the 3 days.
Like little mini TED Talks.
Little mini TED Talks, basically. They would have people come up and explain things that are going on and things they worked on and things like that. So some of it I had heard other places and other things, but that was really good. So the Imagineering booth, absolutely a highlight.
When we went into the Imagineering booth on day 2, we saw a bunch of blocked off area. Actually, as I was talking to the Imagineer that was manning the booth at the sculpting table, and we were kind of asking, you know, what are some of the new things that are coming down the pipe? And he's like, you know what, just wait and see. Because that night, it was a parks panel. And then so there were some interesting hidden secrets that they were revealing after the parks panel. That's why there were some blocked off area. So another panel that we went to on day 2 was the Marvel animation.
This was one of the few panels where a lot of the times they would be like, all right, no cameras. We are going to be patrolling, and they were. They showed previews from Spider-Man, Eyes of Wakanda. When they showed the long, because it was really quick snippets, and I'm like, I wasn't, but then when they showed like the longer form of it, I'm like, okay. That animation style seemed like I really liked it once I saw more, but when like the little blips, I was like not necessarily a fan of the animation style, but when they showed the longer clips, really, really good. The Spider-Man, I'm super excited for that. The director for that just seems like a fan first and then like a director second, and just super excited for the Spider-Man one. What was some of the other...
So the Spider-Man thing, I think they were going to name it Spider-Man Freshman Year, but I think they ended up kind of going back to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. That one is kind of interesting in my opinion because it's kind of an origin story, but I think it's kind of like told from a different perspective.
Yeah.
This one, the little bit of the snippets that they've shown us was the spider is actually coming from a different portal that Doctor Strange was trying to wrangle a monster.
Venom.
And then, yeah, well, they didn't say it was Venom.
It looked like Venom.
But it was Venom-esque. And then a spider, a little baby spider just kind of dropped out of the portal, and then that's the one that bit Peter Parker. So again, with these Marvel universes, sometimes, you just kind of not sure what Earth you're on.
So there was Wakanda, Spider-Man.
There's X-Men 97. So
X-Men 97.
They brought out the voices of Rogue and Wolverine.
Rogue and Wolverine.
Very interesting,
the X-Men 97 and the second season of. And they gave us a teaser of that.
Marvel What If.
The third season of What If.
Third season, unfortunately, also the final season. But looked really interesting. I personally love the What Ifs just because it is kind of a reimagining of your classic Marvel characters in the MCU.
And there's
putting
like
a different spin on it.
At first I thought it was Gundam's style.
That was interesting.
It actually is more like a Voltron style What If universe for an Avengers team, which is pretty cool.
So they had, I think, Captain America, Sam Wilson's Captain America, at the head of the lion, which is, I mean, if you've seen Voltron.
Go Lion.
Yes, Voltron. He's in the Black Lion, but then they also had the lions that formed the arms and the legs. They had like a whole sword. It was I'm a huge fan of Voltron, so if you put Voltron, Power Ranger, and Gundam together and Marvel style, I'm here for that. Sadly, they're like, that's our final season, but as it turns out, they're actually doing a spin-off off of the What If. But because there was I don't know if you've seen the What If series, there was a zombie series episode.
It's like a four episode zombie thing.
So they're creating like a special, they call it a special event series. So they're doing the zombie, but this one's based on Shang-Chi. And the 10 Rings. So they again showed us a little clip of it, and that was really interesting how he and Asian Wu.
Another Awkwafina voice.
Yep. Katie. So it started in San Francisco, and then that one they did it in the kind of the style of Endgame, where they had a huge time jump, and so it's like this is what happened now, and 5 years later they did something else. So that was another thing that they showed. Anything else that it was notable on the animation panel?
No, the big thing about the animation one, and again, this is like why you would want to be in this panel, is you got to see snippets of upcoming stuff, and you got to meet some of the people that were behind the development of it, and you could just see the enthusiasm that they have for the project that kind of gets you excited for it.
Yeah. So the panel that I was able to get was Percy Jackson. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. They had all the cast out. They had all the directors and producers and the younger actors. I think the genuine, their passion
it was very,
really showed up.
So it was very cute to see. They did like a little trivia thing on stage. They talked about the upcoming season. And that was one of the few panels where we got shirts at the end of it. They gave everybody like Camp Half-Blood shirts.
Of course, Mike and I, because free merch, whatever, we promptly put on our orange t-shirts. It turned out to look a little bit prison-y.
Especially when we were on the bus.
And then the other panel that we went to, not really a panel, the other exhibit that we went to was the Nat Geo, right before we went to the parks panel. That was okay. Basically, we waited for a little bit. They just had like a octagon, surround.
It was kind
screen.
of basically just like a montage of Nat Geo clip. We did get a cool little penguin pin. Other than that, I feel like it was just like snippets of Nat Geo documentaries.
Yeah, nothing new.
That if you spent your time
elsewhere,
you
didn't miss much.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you just absolutely got to see those snippets.
Yeah. Of course, the parks panel was a big thing on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And they put on a show.
So it was good. They started off Josh DeMauro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Josh DeMauro pretty much led the whole thing. He did a great job. They started off a little bit with some of the U.S. stuff, and then they talked some of the international. And I kind of had a suspicion with Epic Universe coming out that they were actually going to finish strong with a lot of U.S. park news, and I really wasn't disappointed. I think the big reveal for us was obviously the Villains Land. That's something that Jen and I had kind of been talking about, like especially with the Monsters Land coming out in Epic Universe. People love their Disney villains. It's a certain thing that only Disney can do because of the history of all the characters. I was really hoping that they were eventually going to do that. They're doing it, so I'm that was that was the big one for me. It was like, to me, Villain's Land was the big thing for the night.
Yeah, for me though, I think Disneyland is actually getting a lot of really fun things. So Disney California Adventure in particular is getting a bunch of new rides.
The whole Avatar land, too.
Yeah. So lots of big news in terms of the U.S. parks goes. I feel like this year in particular, they really, really focused on the U.S. parks, which I really, really appreciate.
Especially after last year, which was very much like, hey, here's all the cool stuff that's going on internationally.
For me, DCA, I think, is getting 2 Marvel new rides. That is really cool at Avengers Campus. They have one ride that is the kind of like an arm where you go through sort of the assembling of the Avengers. That one is really cool because if you've ridden Cosmic Rewind in Epcot, they have different music, which kind of changes your ride experience. This one, I think they're going to be kind of like slotting in
different Marvel heroes. So whichever Avenger is like taking you through the flight training, it may change your mission that you're going on.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take the Hulk's flight training mission because I feel like it's going to be a little crazy. I think the ride tech for that one is very similar to
Harry Potter and the Forbidden
Harry Potter ride in the Hogwarts at Universal, where you're on the end of a robotic arm that's doing that. Now, the thing I really like for the Marvel one is it looks like they're going to limit it to 2 seats per arm, which is if you've ridden the Harry Potter ride, it's 4 seats. And if you're on either one of the end ones, it can get a bit much. So I think the fact that they're keeping everybody closer to the center is going to make it a much more enjoyable ride for those that might get a little bit more motion sickness. But that looks super awesome. And then there's more of a
3D ride.
A 3D ride. Yeah. That's the one where you're going to be going. You're using almost like a portal tech.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the Cosmic Rewind type portal, but it's Tony Stark's version of it. So that's going to go in behind. They're going to blow that out.
So behind the Avengers Campus headquarters.
Yeah.
So basically that building, I think they're going to kind of push that out where the building is going to be the entrance, and they're probably going to build out something in the back.
Well, it's going to kind of go out behind, I think. So between, like, if you know where the gap between Avengers Campus and Cars Land is, there's like that little area back there where they kind of have like usually the Avengers Jeep and stuff like that. I think they're gonna keep everything there, but they're gonna blow out behind that and go back. They said I think it's gonna double the size of Avengers Campus. And then the cool thing is Avengers Campus I think is gonna evolve a little bit because right now it's kind of like a recruiting place.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be more like an active, like, Avengers mission campus.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of cool to see how that vibe completely changes.
I think there's also the Coco ride that's coming to DCA as well, I believe.
Yes, that's going back over, I think, by Goofy's flight school area, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they didn't say exactly where things are going to be, but at least the news that they've provided, what they could, they showcased a bunch of interesting things that are going on.
And then obviously the whole Avatar land.
That one is going to be really interesting. And they showcased a mock-up of the ride. It looked kind of like Navi River Journey, and then Grizzly Peak kind of combined a little bit.
Let's get into the rides a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's something coming up which we think they're going to be using looks more dynamic, and I think what they're going to be using is somebody mentioned like the Pirates in Shanghai, where the boats are more dynamic.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some of that, which would make sense, right? You're reusing ride vehicles. The other one was in the Cars Land in Magic Kingdom. They're adding what looks like a hill climb type ride, like a mountainous off-roading one. So that might be more, too, of a bit more of a dynamic. Like the artwork for it looked way more dynamic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of exciting there. And then obviously, I guess the other one in Hollywood Studios is Monsters. The Monsters Inc. land.
Yeah.
So that Monstropolis, right?
Yeah.
Monstropolis. So that's very exciting. It's going to be the first hanging coaster at Disney or hanging thrill ride at Disney. Because
it's simulating the door ride as if that's really cool.
Apparently that's been kind of like an idea that's been kicked around for a long time, and they're finally pulling it out.
Animal Kingdom got some really good news too.
Animal Kingdom got news that
confirmed. So here's the thing: Disney does something that's called blue sky a lot.
Yes.
And I use a different term. Also BS, but we'll keep it PG-13 here. But this time, Josh D'Amaro was very adamant that these are not blue sky projects.
So the way that they started off the presentation on the beginning of the night was everything you're going to see tonight is like boots on the ground, in development, dirt's being moved. Nothing you see here tonight is blue sky, which as longtime Disney fans will say, Blue Sky stuff is kind of like most of the time never ever becomes anything. It feels like so. It's always whenever they start talking about Blue Sky, it feels like half of the people just automatically go, okay,
sure.
show me, don't tell me, right?
Yeah. So Animal Kingdom, they really are going to introduce the world of Encanto. That, I think, got a huge applause and reaction from the audience.
Yep. And then Indiana Jones is going in the dino area, but it's going to be a new ride.
I'm excited about that.
So they're not redoing stuff. They're basically going to do that, and it's going to be based in South America. It's going to be Amazon,
tropical America. And then I think their Zootopia, the Tree of Life, is going to be rethemed as Zootopia.
Oh, that's
been confirmed. I think that's coming down to 2025.
Okay.
And then we know Test Track is already sort of under refurbishment. So 3.0, whatever that's going to be looking like. They're introducing.
I kind of hope they go back to the crash test dummies a little bit. But
according to the concept art, it looks interesting. It looks different. I don't think it's going to be back to what it was. It's based on the world of it. It's actually based on the World of Energy, which is actually another older ride that was in Epcot that got replaced by Guardians. Actually,
it would be interesting to see. I would like to see GM possibly convert those things. Yeah, that would be fun. And what I think would be really cool for Epcot is if they updated the ride vehicle a bit.
I think they will.
Right?
Yeah, it looks different.
Give Epcot something new, special, and unique that's not like Radiator Springs or like just new ride vehicle. Like it really needs like a new just tweak up. And can we go a little bit faster than 65 miles an hour, please? Come on, Epcot, just a little bit more.
They're also introducing a couple of lounges. Epcot is getting a new lounge. I don't know if it's a DVC specific lounge.
I don't think. So that was one of the questions. I don't think they would do a DVC lounge announcement at a big event like this, right?
Yeah. They didn't say specifically DVC, but I think the rumor before was that that's going to be a DVC lounge. And then Magic Kingdom, they are Pirates of the Caribbean, the Tortuga Tavern or something. I think they might be adding a lounge to it.
Good news is they're really putting a lot into the parks. I think there's going to be some new stuff for us to see, go experience. I think they're really leaning into some of the things that they do well. And, that kind of helps, I really think kind of separates the Disney park from a lot of other theme parks right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think outside of the U.S., I think international parks are getting some new Marvel rides. I think Shanghai's getting a Spidey ride. Hong Kong's getting a Spidey ride. Tokyo has everything anyway.
Yeah.
Paris is getting a Lion King land.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Pride land. So
they're really building out Paris because Paris is a pretty small park. They need more stuff, so they're really building that out.
And then they talked about sort of the nighttime entertainment. I think
there's a new parade, some new stuff.
New show.
That was kind of some of the early U.S. stuff that they teased before they went to the international, and then they kind of finished with like a lot of the big, like the rides, new lands, things like that.
Yeah, nothing too much from the hotels, but the cruise line got some new news.
Yes, the cruise line got, so is two relatively new cruisers. We were kind of like looking to try and check off boxes of riding the different ships. Disney decided that they needed to increase that challenge difficulty level for us, and there's 4 new ships coming out that aren't even part of the. I think there's still 2 more that are being built.
2 more being built,
and then there's 4 more after that. So there'll be 13 total, which is very exciting. If you haven't been on a Disney cruise, would recommend. Those were the big things. Very excited. We love going to the parks. So Barks News was like the big one for us. I think that was the one we were most interested in. We wanted to see the Legends on day 3, but like Saturday night was the one for us, and I did not leave disappointed. Yeah,
they brought out Deadpool, did a whole thing, which is really cool. Deadpool at Disneyland, which is fascinating.
Yes, that is. If you have the fortune to go to DCA while Deadpool is still there, I would go ahead and do that if you haven't done so already.
So I think that kept up the day 2.
Yep, and then.
Getting home, I think we actually decided to get a ride.
Yes, we actually met up with a friend there, and they gave us a ride back, which after that I was like, I'm going to drive. So 3rd day we drove. But so that was, day 2 was great. At this point, we were 48 hours in. We had been waking up really
very
early.
Very little sleep.
Going to bed
lots
late.
of waiting.
It was starting to wear us a little bit, but it was great. I every day felt good. So at this point, so even though they were long days, they were great.
Last day, like the previous 2 days, the day started at 3:50 a.m. But this time, actually, I didn't wake up Mike.
I slept in that day because I think we had pulled everything that we wanted to, and I wasn't too worried about it. We ended up going, again, 7:30, waited in line.
That was a long line, too. I actually got to grab coffee while Mike was waiting in the main line. Like Mike mentioned, a lot of the guests are very we're all very excited. We're Disney fans.
Took you an hour and 10 minutes
to get coffee.
Though.
Yeah. And then after that, I think the morning actually started out really strong for me. It was very, very, impromptu. So we walked by. There was this huge locomotive engine that was on display in the showroom floor. And at that point, we hadn't decided what we were going to do in terms of panels. My virtual queue for the merch hasn't been called. So kind of just walking around trying to figure things out. I know there were a couple things that we needed to do. We saw the locomotive engine as we were walking by. There was an engineer or conductor on the Disney Railroad that was just standing there.
Mark.
Yes. He's an almost 20-year veteran of the Disney company. We spent like a good 10 minutes talking to him. He explained how the steam engine works in Disneyland, gave us some pointers.
So it was right by the Lionel train booth, and they had like a cutaway of a steam engine. Which I had never seen a cutaway of before. And it was really neat to see kind of like the inner workings. He explained how the whole thing worked and it walked you through the process and talked about like when you're training, some of the first things that they teach you. That was like, not, okay, you're here for Marvel, you're here for Avatar, Lucasfilms, you're here for Pixar, you're here for all these things. And I think one of my favorite things that I did was talking to the train engineer for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to go in the wintertime when hopefully Mark is working on a day. And if I see him, I'm definitely going to say hi and see if I can get a tender ride on the train, which they do when it's not too hot because it gets pretty warm up by the engine. It's very pleasant. Guy was super enthused. Again, another guy that I don't think goes to work. This is definitely something that he enjoys doing. He looks forward to talking about, like, you could just feel the enthusiasm for what he does coming off.
He let us do the whistle?
Yeah, which apparently that's all from Morse code. Back when trains didn't have communications, they would toot the whistles with Morse code to let you know what you're doing. 2 toots is going forward, 1 long toot is stopping. Evolves to the trams. So when you're on the trams and you hear them before they take off, give the quick beep beep. That's from trains originally. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. So right after that, I think that was the Tiana panel, which, oh my gosh, I teared up.
That was the first panel of the day. And then, okay, again, just like the Goofy movie documentary panel, this was another outstanding panel. They were talking, it was basically the people from the movie have come back to do a series.
A Disney Plus series.
A Disney Plus series. And they had
Anika Nona Rose.
And then the director. And then another creative director.
Yeah.
And just a bunch of, like, again, really talented people, super passionate about this project. And it was just, again, you could just feel the enthusiasm for what they were doing coming through.
I think they talked a little bit about the ride itself as well as the animated feature.
So again, like, one of the great things about this panel was it focused kind of like a lot on all things Tiana.
Right.
And I think one of the really interesting things that they talked about was a lot about the ride. And there's a lot that I didn't know or appreciate about the ride. That now, having heard them talk about it and all the effort that they did, like, they went down to Louisiana, they found, world-renowned local artists and started working with them, and then they're like, hey, we want to do the cue music for this. And those local artists in Louisiana basically put the call out to all the artists in Louisiana, and apparently just like it's a who's who of musicians that did the cue music for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, right? So much so that there's going to be like an album dropping.
There's going to be a soundtrack
for that cue. Every musician on there in their own right is amazing. Right? Like they could do a solo album on something, but they all collaborated for this. So
some of the sort of the backdrop, the props, and everything in the queue, they really invited local artists.
So like the ironwork and stuff that's from like
mural.
A third generation iron worker. You got all that stuff down there is just they really they really went crazy deep into really bringing part of Louisiana to that ride.
Yeah, no, and you know, like I actually got to ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure already as part of the preview, because now it's out open in Magic Kingdom. And when I rode it, I actually wasn't quite sure what the storyline is or the queue. And after listening to this panel, like I actually have a much better appreciation for all the work in going into the details and Easter eggs.
Yeah, and so again, another good panel where they pulled back the curtain, they told you stuff that you wouldn't normally know. There's no other real way to find out unless you were working on that project. Yeah. So that was kind of fun. I really appreciate that. And then we ended up later because we did Imagineering booth on the third day to go see some of the preview stuff from night 2. And some of those panel members were going in. They were walking by and we just said, hey, we really enjoyed that panel this morning. And that person stopped on a dime and then talked to us for like another 5 to 6 minutes about the stuff. So just again, just a bunch of great people working on that panel. You can tell they love what they're doing.
What capped off that already amazing panel was that finally we got to hear and Anika Nona Rose perform in person.
While she had a cold. Like, it was very clear early on.
She wasn't feeling
it's an hour-long panel, and they're kind of going through, and they're going through really fast. And there's like 10 minutes left on the panel, and they're like wrapping up the panel, and we're kind of like, what's going on?
I was hoping they were going to show some footage from the new feature.
But so Anika Nona Rose gets up and sings, and you can tell she's a Tony Award winner.
Amazing.
With a cold.
Blown away.
Just knocks it out.
So that was one of my more favorite panels of the whole entire trip.
And that was the start off the day. So day 3, best way to start the day. I was so happy that we did that.
After that, we went back to Imagineering. And remember, we talked about the fact that the previous night we had gone to the parks panel. Queuing was a little kind of crazy, actually.
So there was a couple of times where something was so popular that they'd fill up the queue. And then they would put essentially blockers in place that would be like...
The rest of the show floor was still open, but then because they had blocked off area that they were revealing as part of the parks panel.
So like people were queuing up, and Jen had tried for about a half hour to try and get into this queue line.
It was really rough. They kept on closing and closing.
It was kind of cute because there was a cast member that clearly had saw that this is something that Jen wanted to do and was just having trouble getting into the queue, so they kind of like made a spot and were like, here you go. Be polite, be persistent, and sometimes magic happens. Right?
Be polite, be patient, be persistent, because I think one of the things they kept on saying was keep moving. They didn't say you have to be moving to a particular area.
So as somebody that was in marching band at one point, they just kind of kept marching in a loop, waiting to get in.
You have to be off the red carpet area, but you need to keep moving. I'm like, all right, I hear you loud and clear. I'm moving. I keep moving.
So I don't know if that's malicious compliance or if it's
creative compliance. Yes.
So,
but once we got into the special area where they roped off from the previous day, it was really neat. We got to see some really fun...
they had a mock-up of the Monsters ride. They had a couple of the new land. They had the mock-up of the land for Encanto in the Indiana Jones area. They had actually one... So there's a new carousel going into Animal Kingdom. That's all wooden carved. Well, technically, all the horses on the other ones are also wooden.
I think Triceratops spin is going away, but so that is going to be replacing.
There are all these different, going to be obviously Animal Kingdom themed. They happen to have one of Kevin, so there's on the carousel, there's going to be a Kevin you can ride. Or at least one of Kevin's species, maybe not Kevin. That was really good back there. They had art teaser board of concept art for upcoming stuff.
They had a whole mock-up of Lion King, the Pride Land.
But people were obviously stopping to like really kind of take in the new stuff, so that was kind of why that line was moving slow.
I think Avatar. They also had a mock-up of Avatar.
Yes, they had a mock-up of Avatar. What was kind of fun by this point is we had spent 2 days. So it was really like what did we want to do? So, Jen decided that she wanted to get a Pixar ball, so she waited in line to get one of the on-demand Pixar balls. One
panel that I wanted to get into was actually the Disney Archive panel. This one was with Leslie Iwerks as well as Bob Wise. Bob Wise wrote a book, and so this is kind of a marketing opportunity for the book, but at the same time, I think we learned some really interesting snippets about his career.
I mean, it definitely was hey, here's this book. But it was also just very interesting to hear from a longtime, Imagineer talk about stuff.
I think at one point Bob Weiss was the head of Imagineering for a number of years. Obviously, he was instrumental in delivering Tokyo, Disneyland.
Yeah, and so I think the fun thing and the interesting thing about his book is, he tells stories. It's about, obviously, him being an Imagineer, but he said the reason why he wanted to make the book is because there was times where he was the only one in the room. Yeah. And without him telling the story about it, nobody would ever know. Yeah. And he told one story where he was in when they were opening Hollywood Studios. Yep. He was in the Brown Derby with Roy Disney. Bob told the story of them actually breaking into the original Brown Derby to get measurements to recreate it. And when Roy came in, he was like, "Oh, that's the booth I sat in with my uncle, like that booth over there, right?" So really good story. Apparently, he was in charge of color and fun. Yep. So he told
Epcot. So at Epcot, when Epcot was opening, there was not a lot of, nowadays there's, flower beds.
It was very disjointed. Yeah. So he was in charge of making it more seamless. Yeah. And they came to him and said, "You're in charge of color and fun." And he's like, "What?"
And then I think he used an example of, what are those little candies called?
Oh, I forget those candies, but the little sugar wafer candy. Yeah. Basically, he talked about how any of those two colors go together. So they kind of, in the parks, they use a similar concept of
complementary colors.
Complementary colors all over the place.
So nothing, basically it's pastel green to pastel blue to pastel pink. So nothing is very jarring. And this is the stuff that when you go to the park, you don't realize a lot of the thought and, consideration that goes on behind it, because you're your eyes are, wow, this is Epcot. Everything is really soothing and comfortable. But I mean, this is by design, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting. And I think one of the other thing that Bob talked about was when he first started at Disney, he got put on balloon duty. so he had some traumatizing experiences pedaling balloons, I suppose. While I was trying to jostle for a position, meeting Bluey and Bingo, Mike actually got to see another panel, which is he actually got the advanced reservation for, which is the voices of Disney. I wasn't there, so Mike, why don't you share a little bit about that?
So this one was obviously the voice actors for Disney and for various Disney projects. And so they brought out, the first one they started with was Pixar. Mm-hmm. And so they brought out Tom Hanks's brother, basically his brother. And it's kind of like he comes out and it's like the resemblance is strong in this family. They obviously are brothers. They look a lot alike. Yeah. And then they brought out another voice actor that does a lot of roles. So he can do Sarge from Toy Story. He can do a couple of other, they had him run through 5 voices really quick, and it was really good. And what was kind of funny is, obviously, the voice actor that was there was Tom Hanks's brother. He does Woody in a lot of the stuff. Chances are, unless you're watching the first movie, when you hear Woody, you're hearing him. And it was really cute. He shows how he gets his brother's voice, because he's like, well, this is where my voice is at. So, in order to get to my brother's voice, he, says the same thing over and over and over again until he gets to where his brother is, and he goes, and there's Tom, right? So, once he warms up and gets to Tom's voice, he can do it throughout. So, they were going to do a scene. Usually when they do this panel, they're all voice actors come out. Well, what they did was they said, well, unfortunately, 2 of the people couldn't be here for this, so then they did essentially a casting call for people in the audience.
Did you raise your hand?
No, I did not. Okay. So, they did Bo Peep, and then they did Rex. They had 2 people do for Bo Peep. They picked one. And then they had 2 do for Rex. So they picked someone for Rex. And then they kind of took them backstage and got them ready. Then they came out and they read a scene. And they did quite well. I honestly think Bo Peep was the easier of the 2 voices to do. The actor that did Rex has a very kind of distinctive voice. To replicate that was pretty hard. And the guy that was doing it, when he got Rex's excited dinosaur voice, was really good at it. He did quite a good job. That was really good. So they did that. Then they go back. They brought out the original voice of Donald Duck. He did his voice a little bit. And I think he doesn't do it much anymore, because it looks like it's probably really hard on his voice. So he only did a couple of lines. Yet again, unfortunately, we wanted to make it to the Legends ceremony.
Yeah, so the third day, Honda Center show was a lot earlier than the previous couple of days. They started at 5.
5:30.
Yeah.
So this was kind of my only gripe.
Yeah.
2 of the panels that I really wanted to do were at the end of the day, and they kind of ran up into that window where if you wanted to make it to the Honda Center in a timely manner, you kind of felt like you had to make the choice to leave early or not.
Yeah.
In retrospect, probably could have stayed both Friday and Sunday for the whole panels and still made it in plenty of time.
Yeah.
So that would kind of be my, like, chances are you've got plenty of time to get there. So
the Legends panel, they simulcasted at the convention center. So they had the show in Honda Center, but they also had a simulcast.
And you know what?
I'm really glad that we went.
I'm glad we went, because we were kind of thinking about, do we just stay in the premiere stage and watch it? I'm glad we went.
I got to see some really fun celebrities.
That's a pretty good venue. Well, basically they had it set up like a concert venue, and you know, they have like 2 huge screens on either side. I felt like it was good. I enjoyed it, even being all the way in the back. Yeah,
so the Legends, obviously, this time they honored Harrison Ford, Jamie Lee Curtis, James Cameron, some pretty big hitter names in there.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try and go through because I know I'm going to forget some people. One of the neat ones was there was a 50-year Disney cast member that had worked in the park. You know,
I think she was the first Black VIP tour. They called it the tour hostess back in the days.
Just a bunch of firsts.
Yeah.
And just, she got a standing ovation. What a nice, again, just another really nice person.
Yeah, they had Frank Oz, who, you know, if you don't know, worked on a lot of the Jim Henson Muppets stuff.
Yep.
And Yoda. You know, he was the puppeteer for Yoda.
Yep. And I didn't realize he's done a bunch of direct, like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Little Shop of Horrors, like just done a bunch. Really, he was great.
They had Miley Cyrus, probably the youngest of all the Disney legends.
The animator, Mark Henn. That one was really good.
It's on Disney Plus now.
Yeah, go watch the Mark Henn. And then, unfortunately,
John Williams
couldn't be there, but they still awarded him. It was a really good night to watch some awards.
Hopefully you enjoyed our little long rant about our experience in D23, the Ultimate Fan event. Like I mentioned, there was definitely some highlights, and I personally squealed a little bit, you know, in my heart when I saw some fun celebrities, fun panels.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, it was generally, I had a good time. I really enjoyed
the parks announcements. Really tickled me a lot. I'm really excited about some of the upcoming things that are being expanded.
Yeah, I mean that was good. But again, like, I think just being a fan, going, experience, like seeing all the stuff, doing all that, getting like to spend some time with talking to some Imagineers, learning about the Disney Railroad from Mark. A lot of that stuff, just a lot of the stuff that you got to do here, meeting Rocket.
Yeah.
You know, just a lot of little things. And then I think one thing I can't, you know, especially the people that we ran into, being there, being around a bunch of other fans, swapping Disney stories, sharing things that you're excited about, just meeting and talking to people, that was a great time. So even if I didn't get to go to the Honda Center in the evenings, I still would have had a great time.
Yeah.
And I would do it again.
All right, take care.